Hello, my name is Chad Hancock, and my favorite thing is Bluey.
Welcome to the Finding Favorites podcast, where we explore your favorite things without using an algorithm. Here's your host, Leah Jones.
Hello and welcome to Finding Favorites. It is Sunday, June 25th. Somehow we're 6 months into the year and I find that shocking. I'm your host, Leah Jones. This is the podcast Finding Favorites. And this week, a couple big things happened. Finding Favorites hit its third birthday officially. So we're now in year 4 of Finding Favorites. Crossed the 150 episode threshold as well. So that's pretty neat for a COVID hobby to have lasted so long beyond the vaccine and still finding time for interviews and editing, even with 6 hours of commuting added back into my week for going downtown a few days a week. This weekend was the second anniversary, my second cancerversary, the anniversary of the day that I found out that I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I shared a little bit on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. I had gone to get an overdue mammogram because you're supposed to start getting your mammograms at 40. So I was overdue for a mammogram and sort of had been nudged by my friend Lucy Scher, who had passed away 6 months prior from her second round with breast cancer. And her memorial was coming up 2 years ago. And I was like, oh, well, I should have a clean bill of health. I'll, do it for Lucy. I'll just go get my mammogram and go to her memorial and everything will be fine. And in fact, everything was not fine. I had a very small growth. It was 0.6 centimeters. And it's hard for me to imagine such a small, physically small item as my cancer growth was, having really rocked my world for the last 2 years. I had told myself over and over that I was exchanging one shitty year for 40 more good years. And I didn't know at that time that recovery, it sounds silly, but we think that the day someone finishes their cancer treatment is the day they start to get better. And that didn't happen for me. It wasn't a hockey stick improvement. I have certainly gotten better. I can go most of the week without using my cane. My hair is back. It's curly now. There's more gray. But I'm still not nearly at 100% of physically where I was before I started cancer treatment. And that's hard to grapple with sometimes. And sometimes I think, man, if I hadn't got that mammogram, the cancer would be growing, but I wouldn't need a cane. And that's real fucked up. But that's only on the days when I'm feeling really physically weak. So to celebrate 2 years of my cancer journey, there happened to be a Doughboy show in Chicago on my anniversary. And the Doughboys, as a podcast and as a podcast community, have really been a big support and a big buoying community for me. My emotional carrot to get through chemotherapy was originally a set of shows in Boston in January of 22. Like the week I was scheduled to finish chemo. The week I actually finished chemo, there were supposed to be shows in Chicago, and I went out that weekend with a bunch of Doughboy Chicago fans. And then the next week I flew to Boston to just hang out with Doughboys fans who we went to Boston even though the shows got canceled. And then I went out to the Boston shows when they were rescheduled, went to Milwaukee, and then they even did a virtual show on my birthday one year. Again, the Doughboys are not scheduling things, so they're meaningful for me, but boy, did their producers and managers have my schedule on lock. So this weekend, the Doughboys were in Chicago, in Uptown at the Riviera Theater. So I helped coordinate a pre-show meetup. We took over the Uptown Lounge. There were 40 people from the Discord and the Facebook hand-holding club. We just took over the bar. There was nobody at that bar that wasn't a Doughboys fan and wasn't there specifically to hang out with other Doughboys fans. And I have to tell you, it had the vibe of a 2010 Chicago tweet up. There were people who had never met their internet friends before. Everybody was in good spirits. It was just like this corner of what it used to be like to go to a Twitter meetup, a tweet up, when the only thing we have in common is that we use Twitter and we are in Chicago on the same day. So all these folks, like, we have the Doughboys in common. You know, some of us we overlap on How Did This Get Made, or the Sloppy Boys, or Blank Check with Griffin and David. So, or High and Mighty. We watch Grand Crew. We love Carl Tart, Clang Clang. So it was just this really fun group of podcast listeners completely taking over a 5 a.m. bar at 5 in the afternoon. And I stopped by Middle Eastern Bakery and got baklava and date cookies. And I got some little cake toppers. One said, get your mammogram. So they were the get your mammogram baklava and the good job not dying date cookies. And so I shared dessert with everybody. And then we went to the Riviera and Ronnie joined me too, for me, celebrating this 2 years of my cancer journey with one of my favorite podcasts in my favorite podcast community. In the meantime, my health updates are that I finally got to see a sarcoidosis specialist after essentially waiting a year since I went to the Mayo Clinic last summer. Not quite a full year, but it took a long time to get in to see the specialist. I had a pulmonary function test, and my lungs versus a year ago are so much better than they were when I finished chemo and when I finished immunotherapy. So my lungs are in better shape. Lymph nodes are stable or shrinking. Everything in my lungs stable or shrinking, with one exception, but it was something they biopsied a year or two ago. So they're not worried about it. It's just there's this one little spot that we're watching. I have a few MRIs scheduled for this summer while I get just tracking that sarcoidosis, which is what has made recovering from chemo so difficult for me. And maybe this is the week that I will try getting on my bicycle again. I have this weird feeling that if I don't try and ride my bicycle, I can still ride my bike. I'm really afraid of, I haven't ridden my bike since I got diagnosed with cancer. And I'm afraid of finding out that I don't have the core strength to ride my bike. And I don't want to lose that. So until I find out I can't do it, I can still ride my bike. But this week I think I put air in the tire. So I think this is the week I'm going to take my bike outside and maybe ride around the park or something. So without further ado, this week's episode is with Chad, the host of Wackadoo, a Bluey podcast for adults, and also one of the co-hosts of You Tried That. Chad Hancock and I are members of the Discord, so I thought it appropriate to share this interview, where we're talking about the kids show Bluey. But we know each other thanks to the Doughboys. So thank you, Weiger and Mitch, for a very fun weekend in Chicago. I still don't know why you went to Do Right Donuts, but I'm glad it was a good experience for you. Without further ado, get your boosters. I got my 5th or 6th booster recently. So get those COVID boosters. They're available if you're immunocompromised or over 65. And I think there's a pretty loose definition of immunocompromised. So do what you can to get that new booster. Wash your hands, wear a mask, and keep enjoying your favorite things. Hello and welcome to Finding Favorites. I'm your host, Leah Jones, and this is the podcast where we learn about people's favorite things and get recommendations without using an algorithm. This afternoon, I'm so excited because one of my fellow Domies, a fan of the Doughboys, is here with me this afternoon. He is Chad Hancock. He's the host of Wackadoo, a Bluey podcast for grown-ups, and one of the 3 hosts of You Tried That, which I was on a year or so ago. Chad, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. It's so good to see you again on a podcast.
Yeah,
screen.
for sure. It's been a couple years since I saw you on over a Zoom or whatever.
Yeah. How is the life of You Tried That going?
Good. Yeah, we just passed. I think we're at like 5.5 years.
Wow.
That we've been doing that podcast, which is wild to think about. Like every episode we try 3 snacks. So to think about the amount of calories I've shoved down my throat, in the name of podcasting is a little horrendous. But
yeah,
but it's fun.
I mean, I think I managed 14 episodes of my candy podcast before I just sort of found out I'm not a 2 podcast a week editor. Like, I don't have the capacity.
Right.
But I still have so much candy in my house from people. All it took was 2 episodes for people to start shipping boxes of candy.
Right.
And then my co-host went to the Chicago Sweets and Snacks a year ago. And I still have candy I had to buy organizers for the candy in my house for a podcast that has been on hiatus since like October.
Yeah. That happened to us too, actually. And we had listeners that would like travel places, and when they would go they would make it a goal to bring back like 3 snacks from Spain or 3 snacks from Chile or something like that. And so we have all these episodes where it's like, here's a bunch of food from a country I've never been to.
Yeah.
Like we even had one was like Papua New Guinea snacks, which was
wow.
So that's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love those care packages.
Mm-hmm. So what are you going to do with that backlog? You slowly work your way through, or re-gift it, or what's the plan?
We're going to. My co-host I've explained to her like I don't have the editing capacity.
Yeah, right.
And because we record in person, like either I have to get a lot better about like I've got like a Zoom recorder, and like if we get better about wearing headphones and managing the gain and like really doing proper sound on the recording side, it would be easier. But as it is, there's like a lot of crossover between our mics, and so then you've got to do just a lot of audio editing.
Right.
And so she has said she would take on the editing. And so whenever she wants to take on the editing, we will come back.
I originally did all the editing for You Tried That for like the first year.
Yeah.
And I will say a food podcast is much harder, like, because we're eating the snacks live.
Yeah.
And there's the crinkling, chewing, you try to edit out, stuff like that. And eventually I was just like, all right, we got to like take turns, edit. So I only have to edit every 3 episodes anymore, which is nice.
That's great. Yeah, because you have to decide like how much, because there was an episode I released with like very little editing. I didn't edit out the like pause to open the bag, the find it. And she was like, if maybe we could like take a little bit of that out. I'm like, I know, but it's hard. It takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
And then I went through and I did another edit, and it took like literally 15 minutes off the podcast. Of like mouth noises, of crinkling bags, of like trying to decide what to taste, of cutting. Whoa, is there a knife? Like just like all the logistics. It took a solid 15 minutes off of it.
Yeah, so we'll have like we'll try a snack, and then we'll spend a good 20-30 seconds of just silence while we're trying to decide what we think about it.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you listen to the episode, it's just like I take a bite and I have immediate reactions because I like trimmed all that out. Yeah. Makes it sound much smarter than we actually are.
Yeah, but I'm interested in. I've seen some TikToks about Adobe's new product, Adobe Pod, that has some maybe automated editing stuff in it. And if I already use Audition, so if I could figure out a way to layer in some of their AI tools, that might bring us back to the air sooner.
Okay. Well, finally a good use for AI then.
Yeah, one that like automatically goes through and cuts the silence, but then like leaves things in order.
Yeah.
Because I'm worried right now that if I did like, all right, cut out all the silence, it would do that. And then it would just like shorten each track and not leave them where, a conversation.
Yeah,
Just
right,
two people
right.
yelling at each other for half an hour.
I need an AI editor that cuts out all my jokes that flop, so that I can sound funnier.
A heckler AI.
Right.
Or like
Exactly.
a mute button AI. Yeah. So you're in California, right?
I am, yeah, San Francisco. Mm-hmm.
San Francisco. Wow, in the city?
Yeah, in the city itself. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but I'm from Chicago area originally, from northern suburbs of Gurnee. If you know where that is. It's like Six Flags up there and stuff.
And the outlet mall.
Gurnee Mills, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But nice. I grew up there, but I've been in San Francisco since 2006, so been a while now.
Nice. Do you feel like a true San Franciscan?
Yeah, and it only took probably 2 years. Like I would fly home a lot because my mom is still in Chicago area.
Yeah,
and I remember it was maybe I'd been out here for about 2 years, and I went home over a Thanksgiving, and there was like a huge snowstorm, and I like mentally couldn't take it. Like my brain froze. Like I was like, I used to go and like roll around in the snow, like, love snowballs, blah, blah, blah. And I go there one time and it's like below freezing and I'm out. I said to my mom, I'm like, I'm never visiting you in the winter again. You have to come visit me.
Yeah.
And then she's like, California has ruined you.
Amazing. Yeah. I spent the summer of 1996 in San Francisco for an internship. And I've been back only a couple times since then, but it was a blast. But I know 1996 San Francisco and 2023 San Francisco are two different places.
Right.
Yeah.
Lots changed, yeah.
Yeah.
We got like new skyscrapers and housing is way more expensive.
Yeah.
100 times more expensive than it used to be, yeah.
Right. Like I sublet a room in the Mission in a 3-bedroom apartment, 3-bed, 1-bath for $500 a month.
Oh.
1996.
Yeah, it would be 6 times that now easily.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was on like 16th and Guerrero, maybe something like that. It was great. It was a good time.
Yeah, I do love San Francisco though. It's like it's weird because the weather is like, it's like mid 60s basically year round.
Right.
And so I would like it like a little warmer, but then I feel like a complete idiot ever complaining about the weather because like, it doesn't rain a lot, we don't have snow, it never gets really cold. And so
right. But there's like enough fog that it's not a constant drought. Like things still, the plants still get the water they need just in a different way.
Right. But I do love living in the city. Like I live sort of near the south part, so it's not like near, the downtown. It's not as super busy. It feels a little residential, but still really close to the subway, so I can like get to a lot of interesting things, and so it's kind of a nice part of the city to live where I get like sort of those best of both worlds of like the city experience without too much of the crowd. Like you can usually find parking on my street, that kind of stuff.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also like San Francisco is tiny.
Yeah.
Right? 7 square miles, something like that? Or
7 by 7. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. That was, I think when I moved to Chicago and I realized like how many San Franciscos you could fit in a Chicago.
Right.
Was pretty wild.
Yeah. I remember seeing a map of one time of like Manhattan overlaid on San Francisco. Mm-hmm. And it was like San Francisco was just the very bottom part of Manhattan.
Right. It'd be like just like Wall Street or Soho or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. But it still takes forever to get across because you got to go up and down all the hills and stuff. And so.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a beautiful area. I just interviewed someone about, mostly we were talking about monarch butterflies, but we also talked about Sequoia National Forest and Redwood National or State Forest, National Forest. Mm-hmm. Because from San Francisco, you go like north into Marin County,
Yeah.
Like, just any bridge you pick is like a different ecosystem you're going to.
Yeah, exactly. You go across the Bay Bridge to Oakland, which is another city, but like 10 degrees warmer every day. You know what I mean? So
wow.
It's it's interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure the thing that I hadn't seen about San Francisco before I went there when I was 19 years old was that Mark Twain quote. What is it? The coldest winter I ever spent was like a summer in San Francisco or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, our May was pretty cold this year, actually.
Yeah.
It gets warm in like October or September.
Right.
Which is sort of weird. But that's when we have all our heat waves.
Wow. Well, now feel like a San Francisco resident.
Yes.
Does that mean you've abandoned your Chicago teams?
No, absolutely not. Yeah. Still a big Cubs fan, still a big Bears fan. I actually I went to my first baseball game since before COVID, earlier this year when the Cubs were visiting the Athletics.
Oh, nice.
Yes, I was super excited to that. I'm like, all right, like, I'm ready to start going to baseball games again. I really missed it.
Yeah.
And then not to date this, but tonight the Cubs are playing the Giants in San Francisco, and I was trying to go to the game, but like I just couldn't make a babysitter work, and so so I'm not gonna be able to make it, but yeah, still root for them, and the Bears I've fallen off with a little bit over, I don't know, the last like kind of 3-4 years for whatever reason.
They're hard to continue to cheer for. They make it hard to be a fan.
It's partially that, and it's also partially like I have two young kids now, a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, and it just ever since my daughter was born, it's like I don't have Sundays anymore. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and so there's just never it's impossible to actually sit down and like watch a football game because I'm like taking her to the playground or playing with her, just whatever it is, and and so it's sort of fallen off for that reason.
All right, so you're San Francisco, but still honor your Chicago roots.
Yeah, yeah. I was 26 when I moved out here, so like they had imprinted enough on me at that point that I wasn't gonna, betray my teams or whatever.
Nice. Well, Chad, the theme, finding favorites, I talked to people about their favorite thing, and you said both snacks and Bluey. So where would you like to start?
Let's start with Bluey.
So you started this year the podcast Wackadoo, a Bluey podcast for grown-ups.
Yes.
All I know about Bluey is that Bluey is the new kids show that parents love. Kids seem to love it. Parents seem to love it. And it doesn't seem... There was that whiny, bald kid that was really bratty that people were like, whatever you do, don't watch... not Charlie Brown. Not Conrad. It was this kid, this whiny, bratty kid that was super popular. And Bluey seems to be the antithesis to that, but tell me about Bluey.
Yeah, I think Bluey actually is the antithesis to most kids shows.
Okay.
And I think that's what sort of like sets it apart. Like if you look at a show, I mean, there's a lot of kids shows out there, and a lot of them sort of follow a same formula to better or worse, degree, right? So like a classic one that's going on right now, Daniel Tiger is very popular.
Yep.
And that show's fine, but like it's a little mind numbing to watch as a parent because like just the dialogue and everything just feels so basic, and it has these like songs in it that are, to be honest, like kind of obnoxious. And then, or you have something like Coco Melon, which is a show that I just find completely unwatchably insipid.
Yeah.
Where it just is like it seems like it's playing to like the lowest common denominator.
Yeah.
Then you have shows like Sesame Street, right? Like a classic.
Yep.
But also at this point, 50 whatever seasons in, like very, very formulaic, repeats
Mm-hmm.
itself a lot, like that sort of thing. And really like a wildly varying quality, even within like a specific episode, because it'll jump from segment to segment, and you'll have like one segment with like way too much Elmo that's just like completely awful, or
Yeah.
and then you get some Cookie Monster stuff, which is much better, that kind of thing. Um, so in a lot of ways, like Bluey to me is a show where if I was going to draw up all the qualities that I would want in a little kid show, it pretty
Mm-hmm.
much hits like all of those check marks. So, for example,
Okay.
the episodes are 6 to 7 minutes long. So like
Perfect.
it's perfect. It's like they get
So
in,
wait,
they
is
get
it even
out.
on TV? Is it a
Yes.
YouTube? Is it a okay?
It's on Disney here in
Okay.
America. It's originally an Australian show.
All right.
And what Disney will do if you watch it, we watch it on Disney Plus, but if you watch
Yep.
it on the Disney Channel, they will pair 2 episodes back to back for like a 15-minute block.
Okay.
Um,
Great.
And so that's sort of how it works. But it's like, if with that episode length, if there's like the episode, the show never wears out its welcome,
Mhm.
like and you sort of like get the point and then like get out, or if there's like an episode that maybe you don't like as much, it's over in 5-6 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's a great part. Second great part, it's about dogs.
Sure.
I'm a huge dog lover, so
Mhm.
that's right up my alley.
Yeah, you've got a great dog that looks like a mop.
Yes, I have a dog named Napoleon who is a Puli.
A Puli.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
is like a Hungarian sheep herding dog. Yeah, he looks like a mop. He's
It's a very cute mop.
yeah.
I mean it in the nicest way. He's got like these wonderful dreadlocks. And that sometimes you put them up in a scrunchie and it's really funny.
Yeah, he's well, I mean, I could go 20 minutes on him later if you wanted to.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's about dogs. That's fantastic. It's got really, really great music. Like, it doesn't have songs, but it has
Mhm.
background music that is like, original compositions, but that are actually like catchy and sophisticated in a way that kind of both kids and parents can enjoy. Like,
Oh,
sometimes they
nice.
will incorporate elements of classical music into it,
Mhm.
or lots of different instruments, things like that. There's actually like 2 different Bluey soundtrack albums that you can listen to on Spotify or wherever.
Nice.
And like, my daughter will request them while we're, driving around or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I don't mind putting this on and listening to it while we drive.
Because it's kind of like chill vibe music, but not annoying
Yes.
lyrics, not like repeating weird lyrics and stuff.
Yeah, they're like all instrumental, and they're all like,
Nice.
well made and that sort of stuff. It's also very funny. Like, it's legitimately funny. Like, almost every episode has multiple quotable lines or like laugh out loud moments for both
Mhm.
parents and kids. And it's structured in a way that like the best Pixar movies are, where like
Mhm.
the kids will appreciate certain aspects of it and laugh at certain aspects of it,
Yeah.
and then parents will appreciate it at a different level
Yeah.
and laugh at different parts of it. And they do a really good job of sort of like threading that needle or whatever in almost every episode.
And the parent joke line isn't with like a wink wink, kids are dumb, right? Like, it
No.
seems right.
That's the thing, is like, I mean, I love, right, like The Simpsons, but a lot of times
Yeah.
the jokes on The Simpsons are like, look how stupid Homer is, right? Or like,
Mhm.
like they're making fun of Bart or whatever it is. Like, this show is never like that. Like the parents are like not only competent parents, but actually like really good examples of like parenting.
Mhm.
And in some ways it's almost a show that like teaches parents how to parent, as opposed to
Mm.
like, as well at the same time of like teaching kids how to navigate various life situations.
Yeah.
So the jokes are never really like mean at the expense of someone or whatever.
Yeah.
They're always just sort of like funny things that people say, or the way the kids talk. They talk like 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds and 6-year-olds, where they like will mess up words just a little bit, like get
Mhm.
words in the wrong order, that kind of thing, in a humorous way.
So do I just think Bluey's a dog, Bluey is a dog, right?
Yes, she's the main character of the show. She's a 6-year-old dog. So
And
she's sort of the main character. She has a younger sister who's 4 named Bingo, and then she has the 2 parents, the mom and the dad. Bandit is the dad, and then Chili is the mom, and so that's sort of like the core family.
Okay, and they're all dogs.
Yes, they're all every character on the show is dogs. It's like it's like a world where dogs had evolved instead of humans.
Okay.
So there's no humans anywhere, but but they still have all the other animals as normal animals, like birds, cats, rabbit or kangaroos and stuff. Those are all like they are in our world. Like a kangaroo is a kangaroo. It doesn't talk or anything like that. Only the dogs talk.
Only the dogs talk.
Mm-hmm. Nice. And the dogs all have like, the adult dogs have like jobs and, they drive cars, that sort of stuff.
Okay. Got it. First, I was going a lot of different ways with it. So that's helpful. And do both of your kids like to watch it, or is it just for your 4-year-old right now?
Yeah, just for the 4-year-old. My son, we haven't started with him yet. I don't, he's just 1. I don't think he has like the attention span for it or anything yet. But we'll probably start showing it to him, maybe when he's around 2, something like that. But he does love the music already because, we'll play the music while we're in the car, that sort of, or like in the bath, that sort of stuff. And that makes him smile.
Nice. So what took you from being a parent who enjoys the show and finally you're like, oh, something I can watch and do want to watch?
Yeah.
What pushed you over the line to, I got a podcast about it?
Well, it's funny. So, I've seen every episode of Bluey that has been released in the United States.
Yeah.
Probably at least 10 times each.
Okay.
And because it's my daughter's favorite show, she watches at least 2 episodes every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And there's still some episodes that have only come out in Australia that haven't come out in the United States yet. So I haven't seen those yet. But I was just sitting around one day and I was just trying to think to myself, like I asked my daughter what was her favorite episode. Mm-hmm. And she listed like 7 episodes, as kids do. And so then I started to think what was my favorite episode.
Yeah.
And I was actually having trouble answering that question.
Because you also had 7 favorite episodes?
Exactly. I was going through, I was like, well, maybe it's Keep You Up. No, maybe it's The Weekend. Maybe it's Escape. Maybe it's Sleepy Time. Like, I just started thinking about all these different episodes that I love. And so what I decided, or initially I was like, all right, maybe I'm just going to write down all the episodes and try to, like, rank them. Now, to be clear, each season, there's 3 seasons, although only half of the 3rd season has been released in the US. Each season has 52 episodes.
Holy moly.
Yeah, so there's like, right now in the US, there's like 130 some episodes released. And when they release the rest of season 3, it'll be, over 150 episodes. So.
Wow. So that's like an episode a week. Like every week there's a new episode, 52, right? 52 weeks a year?
Yeah, right.
Ish, yeah.
Exactly. So I thought about like writing them all out and trying to like rank them that way. And then I'm like, well, that's not fun.
No.
So, writing's not fun. No one likes to write. So then I thought,
get the robots to do that.
Then I thought I would do a podcast about it where each episode I just do a quick recap of the podcast, or a quick recap of the episode, and then try to build an ongoing stack rank, like, as I watch them. And, I thought to myself, like, oh, this won't be too hard. But, like, even as I've gotten up through, like, episode 30, there's started to be some cases where I'm like, should this one be 12 or 13 or 14? And it becomes a little tricky when you sort of really think about it. But I've also, through this process, like, kind of surprised myself, where I, like, my current number 1 episode up to where I'm at is this episode called Markets, where the Bluey and Bingo and Bandit go to, like, a farmer's market, basically, and the interactions that happen there. And I wouldn't have guessed that would have been my favorite episode when I started it. But then as I was rewatching it, there's just so many funny lines and like some really interesting, like subtle lessons that like you don't really pick up on maybe on the first viewing, but as you like kind of keep watching it, you're like, oh, that's like, there's like, so in that episode, Bluey meets up with her friend from school, Indy. And they go around to all these different stalls trying to decide how to spend $5 that Bluey won from the Tooth Fairy.
Okay.
And as they go to each of these different stalls, it's revealed that Indy has a lot of dietary restrictions that either through allergy or like imposed on her by her parents or whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. But like she can't eat gluten. She can't eat, like sugar. She can't eat all these different things. And instead of Bluey taking the approach of like, well, just try it, or like, why can't you eat it, or any kind of judgment at all, she just completely rolls with it and says, all right, well, we can't buy a German sausage, so let's go find something else, right? And it's like complete that sort of complete acceptance of like your friends for their life choices that completely went over my head the first time I watched this episode.
Yeah.
And on repeat viewings, I was like, oh, that's like actually really deep to be in a 6-minute kid show, to have like a message like that.
Right. That we want to respect our friends and their allergies and the choices they're making for their own body.
Exactly.
And it's more fun if we aren't dicks about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
That's
I mean,
probably
like
in the outline.
Yeah. I mean, we all have fun making fun of vegans sometimes or whatever, but like, but really like that part about like sort of accepting your friends for who they are and that inclusiveness message there is like sort of really amazing to me, actually, that they would put something like that in the show.
Yeah. Well, and really, I think that helps kids who are going to head to school systems that might have restrictive, when my synagogue, we often share space with different day schools. And so we had a Jewish day school in our synagogue for many years, and they had a no nut policy. And so as a synagogue, we adopted that because they had kids with severe nut allergies. And so the kids have such an easier time rolling with it, sometimes easier than the parents, because when we were kids, people didn't have allergies.
Right.
We didn't know. We didn't know about allergies. We didn't know as much as we know today. But also like it helps prepare kids for when they start spending more of their day not in their home, that there will be also rules about food, maybe. And this helps them get prepared for it.
Right.
Yeah.
And what I particularly like about it, in contrast to like other shows, is that it's never in your face about the message. Right? Like these actions between Bluey and Indy just kind of happen. They're not commented upon. They're not like, there's no arrow pointing to it saying inclusiveness in big letters or whatever. And whereas I feel like shows like Daniel Tiger or Sesame Street even will highlight that, and more like today's episode is about inclusiveness,
right?
And then like sort of hammer it home, which of course is very important, right? Like it's good that they have those messages and everything else, but I think that's just sort of what elevates Bluey to that like next level is the way that those lessons are interwoven into just like the daily lives of these dogs.
I mean, that seems like really embracing show don't tell.
Yes, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So with that current number one, do you have quotes from it that are in your everyday?
Yeah, actually, absolutely. Absolutely we do. Actually, from many of the episodes, but that one in particular, there's a part where they go to a stand to buy something called poffer cheese. Do you know what a poffer cheese is?
A poffer cheese?
Poffergy.
It's
basically like a mini donut. So almost sort of like a donut hole, but like not glazed or like not quite as sweet. And I had
kind
never
of
heard
like
of
a shoe puff. Is that what they?
Sort of, yeah.
Sort of.
Or like almost like a donut crossed with like a mini pan. Like the texture is almost like a pancake in a lot of ways.
Great.
But it's the size of a donut hole.
I love it. I would like to know it more.
Yeah. so I'd never heard of that.
Yeah.
But since then, I found they have frozen puffertjes at Trader Joe's.
Okay.
And we've been buying them, and they are delicious. They're a huge hit with my kids.
Do you, toaster oven?
Yeah, we just do toaster oven, like
nice.
pop in
right.
12 or 16 of them at a time, and like, it's great for breakfast or a snack or something.
Nice. All right, adding it to the list.
So there's a part where they go to this puffertje stand, and Indy walks up to the salesman, and he says, "Do these have any gluten, dairy, sugar, or wheat in them?" And he just replies, "That's all they've got in them." And so we will use, we will just quote that all the time where, they'll ask, my daughter will ask, "Does this have any blah, blah, blah?" We'll do that one a lot. There's also a part they go to the German sausage salesman and like they just start chanting German sausage. And I was cooking hot dogs on the barbecue recently, and my daughter just ran up and started chanting German sausage. Which was totally adorable. Yeah, so there's lots of them like that. There's another episode that I really like called Keepy Uppy, which the entire episode is them just trying to bounce a balloon with their hands and prevent it from touching the ground.
Okay.
And that's the whole episode, and it's the two kids, Bingo and Bluey, trying to do it, and then Bandit comes in and like does various things to up the difficulty of the game. Like blows a fan at the balloon to make it go flying. At one point he grabs like a leaf blower and, from like just it appears out of nowhere with a leaf blower and makes it, go flying, stuff like that. And there's one part where the balloon goes flying into the neighbor's yard. And the next door neighbor is this kid named Lucky. And he has a dad, and the dad has just the absolute funniest voice actor. Like, I don't know what it is about his voice, like the way he laughs or whatever is hilarious. And so the Lucky and his dad get into the game and start, trying to hit the balloon back over the fence into Bluey's yard. Lucky's dad comes running with this cup of coffee in his hand and like leaps through the air to like hit the balloon, spills his coffee everywhere, and then pretends he's injured himself. Like he pretends he's injured his hamstring to make the game harder. So as he's lying on the ground, he yells, "I've done me hammy." And so now whenever we have a balloon, like my daughter will want to start playing Keepy Uppy, and inevitably a few minutes in, she'll just pretend to fall over and yell, "I've done me hammy," and like grab her leg and roll around. So yeah, there are quotes we use from the show all the time.
That's hilarious. Because that's like, nobody has to teach you Keepy Uppy. Eventually, it's just something you do, right?
Exactly.
Like,
exactly.
It's like the floor is lava. Keepy Uppy is, you wouldn't
they have
even have to tell
They have a floor
people.
Is lava episode too.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, they
nice.
do. Yeah.
Nice.
The other thing too that I really love about this show is there will also be some episodes that will get a little emotional and like almost intentionally tug at like parents' heartstrings, but they always wait to do it until the very end of the episode.
Okay.
So that you don't have, as a parent, you're not like, because there are multiple Bluey episodes that have made me cry like the first time I watched them.
Yeah.
And but it's good that they don't do it like at the beginning, because I don't want to be like sitting there bawling next to my daughter while she's trying to watch this episode. But on the other hand, it's a little insidious, because you will have an episode that is very funny for 6 minutes, and then at the very end they will do like one little thing to just like twist the emotional knife, and is
it a knife that only adults can feel?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So
yeah.
So there's one episode called Grandpa, where
I was about to say, like, your grandpa would have loved that. Just
well,
yeah.
So,
okay. So there's an episode called Grandpa.
So they go. So Chili, the mom, takes Bluey and Bingo to go visit her dad, their grandpa, and the episode is like the grandpa is supposed to be relaxing because he's had heartworms and he's supposed to be like resting and recovering, but instead he's an outdoorsy type, so he's out there like chopping wood or whatever.
Yeah.
And so Chili gets mad at him and is like, "Why aren't you resting? You're supposed to be resting." And he takes off running and he says like, "Come on, kids, let's get out of here." So the whole episode is him and the two kids like running through the forest, hiding from Chili while she's trying to chase them.
Oh no.
Eventually they like take a canoe across a lake to try to get away from her, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Then at the very end of the episode, the grandpa kind of realizes like, yeah, I do need to rest. Like I'm getting older, whatever. And so he stops running and he's just sitting on a pier while the kids are swimming. Chili comes up behind and sits down next to him. And she says, "Oh, I remember when, I used to swim in this lake." And she says, "It feels like it was forever ago." And he puts his arm around her. I'm going to cry almost quoting it.
Yeah.
And he just says, "No, it was yesterday." And then the shot like molds in such a way that Chili changes into like young girl Chili, like right next to him with his arm still around her. And then the credits roll. And so this episode that was like funny and adventurous and everything else, up until the very last line, all of a sudden you just start like crying as an adult.
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely not going to get a kid at all.
No, the kid has no idea like what the emotional impact of that is.
Yeah.
But it's just like the first time I watched that episode, I'm like, wait, what? It's just like tears are coming down my eyes.
Well done, Australian writers.
Yeah. So they do that like there's probably at least like 10 or 12 episodes where they do that, where it's like all of a sudden at the very end there'll just be like one or two lines that just trigger the waterworks.
Have you watched any, or are there interviews with the creators, with the creative team about what they're trying to do?
Yeah, I remember I read an interview with the creators, this guy named Joe Brum, and I think I'm pronouncing that right, but he had set out specifically to he wanted to create like a show that had like a good dad role model. Which is sort of what I was talking about before, where he didn't want to have like a stupid dad as like the TV show dad that so many shows have, just like this numbskull dad that like, and then the wife like nags him constantly or whatever it is, and so he wanted to show like a family where the dad is like loving and caring, but also playful, but also smart. And then the mom is like that too. And so they have this relationship that is like loving and never mean and that sort of thing. But also he specifically wanted to set out to have the kids be realistic. So I remember reading a quote from him where he said, for the dialogue for the kids, the test had to be like, is it something his kids would have said? Like when they were that age. Yeah. And if not, then like the kids weren't allowed to say it. And so kind of running everything through that filter so that like the kids don't ever, so that they always sound like actual kids that age, like Bingo in particular, she's 4, so she will like slightly mess up words sometimes, like instead of like, they're talking about bats one time and she says, they're nocturnal instead of nocturnal, and little things like that sort of the way they phrase the words sounds true to
the ages of the characters.
Exactly. And so I think that was sort of his goal. And yeah, I think he's accomplished it pretty well.
Yeah. I feel like it's a sensation. I'm shocked that there's only 3 seasons out. Like I am and I'm not, because it feels like all of the sudden Bluey was everywhere. Like all of my friends with kids were suddenly obsessed with this new dog. And then having to be very particular with those of us who don't have kids that it wasn't Blue's Clues.
Right. Yes.
Different Blue. Because it just felt like it came out of nowhere and then everybody was Caloo. Caloo is the bratty kid that people don't like.
You got there eventually.
I got there eventually. That's the Rolodex of my brain working.
Good job.
No,
but you're right. It absolutely did. Because I mean, I think I don't know when the first season came out in the U.S., but I know it came out in Australia in 2018. So the show's only 5 years old,
right?
And I think the reason it blew up so much is because of like the way that the show is geared towards both parents and kids in that like Pixar-ish kind of way that I was describing.
Right. The parents can stand to be in the room.
Yes, exactly. And in fact, many parents such as myself, like, I'm excited to watch Bluey with my daughter. You know, like when the season 3 episodes, the first half of season 3 dropped on Disney Plus, it was like maybe about a year ago, last summer sometime. Yeah. And like I was at least as excited, if not more excited than my daughter to like sit down and watch these new episodes.
Now, were you able to restrain yourself and only watch them a couple at a time with her? Or were you like, after she went to bed, did you binge 24 episodes?
No, I didn't do that. I was able to restrain myself. It would have been pretty easy to binge with them only being like 6 minutes long. But
right. Yeah, I feel like you could accidentally watch a lot of Bluey.
Yeah. But half the fun of it is seeing which parts of the episodes she keys in on, you know, what she laughs at, and that sort of thing, and sort of like using that to almost gauge her development in a way, you know what I mean? Like, cause you know, she's been watching this for 2 years now.
Right.
She's been watching this show, and she will, her goal, or the way she operates is she will just watch them all in order. And when she gets, you know, she'll watch like however many, 2 a day or whatever it is. And then when she gets back to the end, she will start back at episode 1 and like start watching them again. And so that process takes 2 to 3 months to get all the way through them.
Yep.
And so then when she gets back to the beginning, it's interesting to see, does she pick up on different parts of the episodes? You know, does she laugh at different things, like that kind of thing? Because there have been episodes where she didn't, like they were maybe a little too complicated for her at the age that she first watched them. And she just either didn't understand what, you know, like there's one episode where they talk about jinx, you know, like two people say word at the same time and one of them jinxes them. And she had no idea what was happening on that. Sure. And like, I tried to explain it to her and she still sort of like didn't understand, you know, but the last couple times, I think now she, you know, sort of gets it. So, so kind of seeing her pick up on different things like that is really fascinating.
I didn't know they had jinx in Australia.
I guess so. Yeah, I guess so.
Like, it's funny to think about. Like, I knew it wasn't a Midwestern thing. Like, I knew it was like, I knew it was national. But for some reason, I don't know. I just hadn't ever thought about people in other countries either using the same phrase, or did they say jinx, jinx, owe me a Coke? Probably not.
No, it's like jinx, and then they have 10 seconds to tag the other person, or else they're not allowed to talk until somebody says their name or something.
Okay,
something
yeah.
Like that.
Yeah, we would sometimes say jinx, double jinx, padlock, private property.
Okay, I haven't heard that one.
So private property was like, I was the only person who could unjinx you. But I don't remember, I don't know, jinx, double jinx, padlock, private property. But I remember that, and I don't remember if you would just try and say all of it before they said it, and then they were your private property, and they couldn't speak until you said their name, or something. You know, it wasn't like you kept jinxing each other, and it was like, oh, now it's a double jinx, now it's a padlock. I think we would just like say the whole thing.
I think we just jinx, and then you punch the other person in the arm.
Yeah.
Because we were like jerk boys.
Yeah.
But the other thing I wanted to say too is that's really interesting about it is that there have been a couple instances where I've actually been able to use it as a parenting tool.
Okay.
So there's this episode called Wagon Ride. And in the episode, they want to go to the playground pretty early on, like early in the morning. And so Bandit is taking them to the playground, and he's dragging them both behind him in a wagon. And along the way, he keeps running into some of his friends who are like out for a morning jog or whatever.
Yeah.
And they stop to talk to him. And while he's having the conversation with him, Bluey is like getting very impatient. Like, why aren't we going to the playground? Blah, blah, blah. So she keeps coming over and like interrupting her dad while he's having these conversations. And so he doesn't want her to do that, obviously. So he says, all right, how about we do this? He's like, if I'm talking to another adult and you want to talk to me, then you come up and put your hand on my arm. And then he says, and then I'll put my hand on your hand to know that I know you're there. And then that way I know you want to talk to me, and you know that I know you're there. And then as soon as there's a break in the conversation, I will, find out what you have to say or whatever. And so he does that.
Feels groundbreaking.
and Bluey listens, and it works great. Yeah. And then we tried that with my daughter. So like my daughter, then she got into a phase where she was just interrupting. Like I tried to talk to my wife or whatever. She's just constantly interrupting. And so we watched the episode again, and I said, hey, next time you want to talk to me, do this.
Yeah.
And she does that now. And like doesn't interrupt, she still interrupts, but like many times she will remember to do that.
Yeah.
And it's like truly been this like game changer in a lot of ways that I never would have thought of without watching the show.
Right. Because it was
I would have just been like, why can't you wait? You know what I mean? Like,
right. Obviously, I'm talking to another adult.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
We're trying to play a dinner. Just sit down for a minute.
Right.
Or whatever. That stuff doesn't work.
Yeah, it was just don't interrupt adults or stand quietly until you are acknowledged. But I love that. It's like, I'll put my hand on you, and then I'll so you acknowledge them without having to interrupt your speech. And then they feel seen, and they know that you're going to address them, and you're not just shooing them away.
Yeah, and it's this kind of thing where, like, as a parent, you're watching it. Your kid does not realize that this is, like, this parenting tool, but you're watching it, and your jaw just kind of drops.
Right.
And
like,
then, like,
that was an option the whole time?
Exactly. And there's lots of moments like that throughout the show where you can just say, like, oh my God, I'm incorporating this immediately.
Yeah. It just makes me think about what it was like to go to the mall with my grandpa in the 80s. Because he had been on the city council. He knew everyone. And it was just like so embarrassing because everyone wanted to talk to him,
right.
Which now I realize how cool that is to live in a city where if you go to the mall, like every 5 feet, you run into someone like that's very cool. It's very cool to be an adult who knows people out in the world. But at the time, it was so embarrassing.
Oh, it must be so aggravating as a kid.
Yeah. Like, we're so
I just want to go to Toys R Us. Why are you talking to this person?
We could go have ice cream, but yet you're talking about politics. Yeah. Huh. Are there any other parenting tips that you've picked up from it that like come to mind immediately?
Yeah. The main thing that they try to reinforce in the episode is it's a lot of games. Like the way a normal episode is structured is there will be like one game. And then, it's either like one or both of the kids playing this game with one or both of the parents.
Okay.
And in some ways, it's almost like an unrealistic model of parenting because the parents will drop whatever they're doing to like play the game. Like it could be they're in the middle of eating dinner and all of a sudden like the kid wants to play some game and they just start playing the game. Like forget about dinner, forget about the chores. So it's a little unrealistic in that sense, but it does reinforce this sort of like importance of playfulness when your kids especially are that young.
Yeah.
Because like they got the rest of their life to be like battered down by the seriousness of life, and
sure,
and made cynical by how terrible things are. But like they're kids, right? When they're little kids, like the world is great, the future's bright, etc. So like it's important to reinforce that in a lot of ways. So like there's this one episode called Daddy Drop Off where Bandit has to take, like last minute, all of a sudden he has to take both of the kids to school. He didn't realize he was going to have to do that. And so they're running late. And he's trying to get the kids to hurry up. He's like, come on, Bingo, like, let's go. And the kids are dragging their feet as kids do. They keep wanting to play games. And even though he's late to the school drop off, he keeps stopping to play the games with them, which makes them like even later. Right.
Sure.
But he still plays the games with them, makes the kids laugh, etc.
Yeah.
Then when he gets finally at the end of the episode and he drops Bingo off at school, drops Bingo off first. And then Bluey is standing next to him. And as Bingo goes off into the school, smiling and laughing, and Bluey says like, well, what would have happened if we hadn't played all those games? And Bandit says, well, we would have been here on time. And then he pauses and then he says, wouldn't have been as fun though. And then Bluey says, you're right, it wouldn't have. And then they like walk off and like that's the end of the episode or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that is something that has always kind of like resonated with me because I am a person that likes to be on time usually.
Yeah.
And like that is so hard to do with little kids.
Yeah.
But even in just other aspects of it, like it's trying to remind myself to like the things that don't matter. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't really matter if she gets super, super clean from the bath tonight. You know what I mean? Like if I'm only able to wash 70% of her body,
sure,
we'll get the other 30% in aggregate over time. Like,
yeah.
If she wants to have some fun in the bath, like, let's have some fun in the bath. So sort of applying that kind of thing of just trying to have fun when possible, is something I took from this episode, and I keep trying to remind myself of, as I parent.
Yeah. Huh. Well, you've sold me. I'm going to have to watch some episodes before I release this.
I would say, if anybody hasn't seen it, actually, Keepy Uppy is actually a pretty good starter episode.
Okay.
Because it sort of is like in a lot of ways, like a prototype of what your average episode is. Where it's like, here's a game, they're playing the game, they're interacting with parents in different ways. There's lots of good quotes, good music, stuff like that. The other one that is sort of like at the other end of the spectrum that is I've looked at a lot of lists of like best Bluey episodes, and this one is at the top of a lot of people's lists, it's called Sleepy Time.
Okay.
And that one is a very different Bluey episode in a lot of ways. That one is, they put Bingo to bed, and she dreams about being in space. And the whole episode basically is like her dreaming, and like how what she's dreaming correlates with like the sleepwalking that she's doing in the real world or whatever.
Yeah.
And that one really twists the emotional knife at the very end of the episode. Like maybe the most of any episode. And it's beautifully drawn. It's got beautiful music. There's funny parts in it. And so Keepy Uppy is like, this is a typical episode, a great example of a typical episode. Sleepy Time is like a great example of what they do when they sort of like play with the form and how they can really like excel in that regard. So those are the two episodes I would recommend people start with to just sort of check it out. Yeah.
Nice. And they're all watch on demand on Disney.
Yeah, they're all on Disney Plus, yeah.
Great. Which is Hulu, which is ESPN. I don't know what they are today.
Some of them are on YouTube too. Like I know Keepy Uppy is on YouTube. I've seen it before.
And they keep their original Australian voiceover actors?
Yes, thank goodness. Because the voiceover actors are really great.
Nice.
And yeah, that all that audio is the same.
Awesome.
So you get like the Australianisms, like the figures of speech that they use and that sort of thing.
Is your daughter picking up just like Australian words from it?
Yeah, I can't think of any, but there's definitely some Oh, like sometimes when they there's a couple episodes where the kids have to like pee, but they're not near a bathroom, and
Yeah.
so they just say like, "All right, let's do a bush wee," which
Right.
is
Yep.
exactly what you think it might be.
Yeah.
And I had never, but now we say bush wee in
Yeah.
when we're in that situation.
That's really funny. Okay, I have to watch it. Is there anything else about Bluey? So you're at, let's see, 30.
Well, so depends on when this. I don't know when this is coming out.
Great question.
But
I probably in maybe early July. I've got like 3 others recorded, I think.
yeah, I'm in like the mid 30s by the time this comes out. Out of 150 or whatever it is.
Right.
But and then I have some episode, like every 20 episodes, I'm just going to release an episode where I read any listener emails that I like, and also just go over the ranking, because I don't want to read like the whole at number 20 is this every single episode.
Sure.
So I do that like once every 20 episodes is my plan. And then I did one other episode. Actually, there was they have a stage play.
No.
Yeah, so they have this play. It's Bluey's Big Play, it's called.
Okay.
And it's currently, well, I don't know if it still is current, but a couple months ago it was touring the U.S. And it was in San Francisco. I want to say back in January. So I got tickets, took my daughter. I was a little hesitant because I had seen pictures online, and it's like giant puppets.
Yeah.
So instead of like having people in costumes, like mascot costumes or something like that, what they do is they have a huge puppet, like a 4 or 5 foot tall puppet, that's controlled by 2 people, and the people are just wearing like all black or all green or whatever it is. And like one person will control like the legs, and the other person will control the hands or the mouth or however it works.
Yeah.
And it's like a 45-50 minute story, and it does this like incredible job of introducing new concepts and having its own story while also playing the greatest hits in a lot of ways.
Okay.
So like there are callbacks to some of the, more like famous moments from the TV show. Like the way it ends is like they decide to play a game of Keepy Uppy.
Oh,
and
nice.
They are like, there's this sequence where there's a balloon, someone's controlling a balloon on a stick, and they're bouncing it back and forth between the puppets, and then all of a sudden all these huge like beach balls come flying out into the audience, and so like the audience kind of like gets to play along and stuff. And that one also, like, at the very end twists the emotional knife where it's like funny the whole way through, and then like the last line, all of a sudden I'm just like crying.
Oh no.
And I was like, how am I crying at a kid's puppet show?
Yeah.
But so I have an episode where I recorded the night we watched it, where it was like, so fresh in my mind, where I talk about that. But that was fascinating.
This tour goes through the end of through like Thanksgiving.
Oh wow.
In markets of all, like Cedar Rapids, Peoria, Toledo, Fayetteville, North Carolina, Madison, Cleveland, like all over the place.
Yeah. So
people can, no matter when you're listening to this, check events.bluey.tv/tour dates. Because it's going forever.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. I was on the fence because I thought it looked weird, but I just rolled the dice anyways because my daughter had never really been to a play before, and I was like, well, let's take her to a play, see what she thinks, and we both loved it. So yeah, I recommend.
And puppets are a nice way to handle that instead of like mascot costumes.
It's far less creepy than I think mascot costumes would have been. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and you can move the puppets more like you can move a cartoon.
Yeah, probably. They go flying up in the air at parts and stuff like that. Yeah. There's actually some impressive puppetry work going on there. And they use it's pre-recorded from the TV show's voice actors, like played over the loudspeaker, and then the puppets like lip sync it or whatever.
Yeah.
So that works well too.
Because I saw recently Into the Woods, the national tour, and Milky, the cow. I don't know if you're familiar with Into the Woods. It's a Sondheim musical with all of the fairy tales.
Oh, okay.
Going into the woods together.
Got it.
And there's a cow named Milky, and Milky is a puppet, and you immediately forget the guy is there. And, and it's so expressive, and it's just so weird because you're just feeling these intense emotions for a puppet that is a puppet. You see the person and you can't help it. You can't help it. The heart wants what the heart wants.
Right. Yeah, I know the feeling.
Yeah. This has been so fun.
Yeah.
And we filled an hour just talking about Bluey.
Yeah. Yeah, can I do plugs?
Yes, absolutely.
Check out my podcast, Wackadoo, if you want to hear more about Bluey. Now, I do call it a Bluey podcast for grown-ups because I just throw in an occasional swear word. That's part of the reason. And then also because I do talk about the more adult side of it, like why this works for an adult. And so I say that at the beginning of every episode, like, if you don't play it around your kids. But I know there's there's a couple other Bluey podcasts out there that like try to like get into like details about behind the scenes or like interview the creators or whatever. I'm not interested in that. Yeah. I keep the episodes very short, like 10 to 15 minutes. So it's an easy listen. I do a quick recap, pull out some quotes and some lessons that I like from the episode, and then just the stack rank at the very end.
Nice.
And then my other podcast that we mentioned earlier, You Tried Dat, which you have been on. Just a content warning to your listeners. It is very adult humor.
Yes.
In a lot of ways. So if you don't like dirty jokes, I would stay away. But if you do like dirty jokes, we have a lot of fun. We play some really fun games. We have a lot of fun segments on there. We just had an episode come out where I went through some like the best of next door posts, where which is always funny to find some wild stuff on there. And then every episode we try 3 snacks, but at 5 years in, it's less about the snacks and more about like us just playing the fun games and
because the 3 of you are college friends or high school friends.
Both. So my 2 co-hosts are both named Nick. One of them I went to high school with, and then the other one went to college with the other Nick.
Okay.
And then they were college roommates. And then I've lived with both of those Nicks at various parts of my life too. So, so we've all been friends for, I guess it's been 25 years or something now.
Yeah.
So, so we know each other in and out, and it's so much fun. We really just started as an excuse to kind of keep in touch with me out here in San Francisco. And that was like a lifesaver for me during COVID, where it was like, because I wasn't able, I wasn't like flying home or flying back to Chicago to like visit them anymore. And so, sort of being able to stay in touch with them has been great. So yeah, we have a lot of fun on that show. If you're interested in that, check it out too, please.
Yeah, it's a super fun show, both for snacks and for friend hangs.
Yeah.
I really. What are you doing, cowboy? What are you doing? He's like, well, I can tell you're wrapping up. I just needed to come for emergency.
So you're talking about snacks. You got any snacks?
We're talking about snacks. I love a podcast that just lets me feel like I'm hanging out and I'm just being quiet, that's why during the pandemic, like Doughboys and Gossip Kings and a lot of those shows that just feel like friend hangs, I got really into, and I stopped listening to like news and politics.
Right.
Because I was living alone and I was like, well, these people are my roommates today. They are my company this week.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think you fill, the three of you fill that, like, that's the vibe, the hangout vibe, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that is exactly it. It's us. We've known each other for so long, and
yeah.
Just
do you,
time with each other.
Other than your podcast, do you want people to follow you on the internet, or is that where they should find you?
Well, you could follow my dog on Instagram. Yep. His name is Napoleon. He is at Napoleon _PULI, so _Pooley. And it's not going to clog up your Instagram feed. It's like 1 to 2 pictures a week, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So check him out. He's pretty cute. He's 16 and a half. If you can believe.
Oof.
He's
an old man.
Yeah, he's an old man. Slowed down a little bit, but
yeah.
Still hanging around.
I just saw an article this week about a dog that was like 31 years old.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Holy
it's the
cow.
World's oldest dog.
Yeah.
And wasn't a Chihuahua, wasn't a little dog. So that was nice. A nice bit of news.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Hopefully Great. Napoleon will make it to 31. We'll see.
Yeah. He's a sweet, sweet puppy. Maybe that's why Cowboy jumped up right now. He's like, you're going to talk about an animal that's not me? Let's see. You can follow Finding Favorites on Instagram and Twitter. As long as Twitter exists, Finding Faves Pod on both. Please go on either Apple Podcasts or whatever, or Good Pods. Leave a review. Recommend it to your friends. If the world's biggest podcasts have to ask for reviews, then I guess the world's smallest podcasts do too. So thank you so much, Chad. This has been wonderful.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Finding Favorites with Leah Jones. Please make sure to subscribe and drop us a 5-star review on iTunes. Now, go out and enjoy your favorite things.